I've got two water quality analysis reports here, one from the city of Detroit and one from my own city where I live. And these are going to help me explain to you why you should not be using tap water in your reef tank. Let's get into it. There's been a lot of information and a lot of debate in the reef keeping hobby over the last, I don't know, couple of decades about whether or not tap water is safe for us to use in our reef aquariums, or could it cause us issues with like algae or potential problems with fish and just be a general problem. Just about every single time you hear somebody say, hey, I've been using tap water for the last 5 years, it hasn't been an issue for my tank, it should be fine. I don't know why everybody's so hung up on this. That is because everybody's tap water is not the same. Some tap water is perfectly fine, specifically that found over in Europe, in the UK, Great Britain, and places like that. But places over here in the United States, the tap water could literally kill fish if you put them in it. So, one blanket statement about tap water being okay or not okay for reef keeping is not the answer. We're going to have to take each situation as a use case scenario, test your own tap water, and find out what it looks like before you decide to use it in your reef tank. Now, when I was doing my research this morning, I came across this really interesting fact.
Wow, this is crazy. So apparently 74% of the people who are watching my videos right now have not subscribed to the channel. So let's fix that, smash that subscribe button, and let's get back to it.
Now that we got that out of the way, let's dig into these analysis reports and just see what the situation might look like. And one of the first things that I saw right on the top of this report is chemical sampling of our drinking water may not be required on an annual basis. Therefore, information provided in this table refers back to the latest year of chemical sampling results. It's not even tested every year. In my case, the last time this report was generated was in 2021, 4 years ago. So this is largely irrelevant to me, but we're going to look at it anyway. First up, right off the top of the list is fluoride. We have that for sure. We don't even have to question whether or not it's in there. It is. The next one up is chloramines, which comes as no surprise. That's something that they use as a water control to control microbes and make sure that we don't get any sort of pathogen into ourselves by drinking this water. Not good for a reef tank. Can be removed. We'll talk about that in a little while. Wait a minute. Aluminum, chloride, we covered that, iron, manganese, and sulfate. Now, these may not be all that bad for a reef aquarium, but in the wrong concentrations, they absolutely could be detrimental to your tank. Now, this page is actually very interesting to me, and it might be something that I dig into a little more later. This page represents the unregulated contaminants, or those that don't yet have a drinking water standard set by the US EPA. Whether these contaminants should have a standard set is what they're trying to determine by doing these tests. The last time this was tested was in 2018. That's a long time. Bromide, dichloroacetate, total organic carbon, 2-propan-1-OL, 1-butanol, and germanium and manganese. Now, any of these may or may not be a problem for my reef tank, but I'm going to have to go down every single one of these and dig down that rabbit hole to find out if that particular thing could be a problem for my tank or not. Detroit, you're up next. Now, what I found with the Detroit water analysis was actually very relevant to reef tanks, and I'm so glad that I just randomly picked this city, because what's on this piece of paper is freaking awesome. So the last time that Detroit tested their water was in 2023. Okay, good. So we're more modern. Great. So that's a little earlier than mine. We're only a year old on this one. There's 3 things that really pop out to me on this test. Number 1 are the silica content in the water. It's at 2.1 with a max of 2.9. That means that Detroit's water is absolutely packed full of silicates. And you know what silicates cause? Diatoms, the ugly phase, brown shit all over your reef tank. If you are continually adding an excess of silicates to your tank, you are going to continually have a problem with diatoms recurring over and over and over in your aquarium. I've experienced that myself by having an RODI unit that where the DI was exhausted and the silicate showed back up in my tank, and boom, ugly phase all over again. It just happened 3 weeks ago. Let's move on. Phosphorus content in Detroit is 0.49 with a max of 0.73. So we've got 0.49 ppm phosphorus in Detroit tap water. You're already at a disadvantage by using this tap water in your aquarium because your phosphates are going to be sky high all the time. You're going to have algae problems if you use this tap water in your aquarium. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Moving on. The next one that I found super interesting was nitrates in Detroit's water. 0.41. Check it out. Right there. 0.41 nitrates right off the rip. So using this tap water in your aquarium is already putting stuff in there that we need to control to make sure that our tank looks the best that it can and grows the best that it can. In both of these scenarios, my city and the city of Detroit, this tap water is not sufficient for using in a reef aquarium. And you might say, oh, well, I can dechlorinate it and I can use C-Chem Prime and stability and stuff. Let's get something straight right now. C-Chem Prime cannot remove things from the water column that we don't want to go in our tanks except chloramines. It converts those into ammonia, and then the ammonia is removed over time through the nitrification process. C-Chem Prime cannot remove phosphates or nitrates or sulfates or bromine or molybdenum or anything like that that we may not want in our reef tank from the water. It cannot take it out. That is not what C-Chem Prime does. Stability is a nitrifying bacteria source. It also does not remove any of those contaminants from the water. Now, what C-Chem Stability can do is provide the aquarium with a nitrification bacteria that can convert the ammonia into nitrates through the nitrogen cycle and stuff like that. These two products are not a magical, I'm going to make this tap water amazing water from my reef tank stuff. It just isn't. That's not what it is. And it aggravates me very highly that we have, I'll say, people in this industry that are pushing C-Chem Prime and C-Chem Stability as a magic tool that's going to fix your water. It doesn't do that. Okay? Now, give me a second to calm down. By the way, if you want to get a Mega Chomper shirt, you can do that. The link is down below. It's in my YouTube store. Get you one. I made these. They're awesome. I felt myself getting a little bit aggravated there, so I wanted to stop and take a breath. So let's go down a different approach. Keeping a reef tank, especially one with corals in it, a mixed reef and invertebrates and stuff like that, water quality is of the utmost importance. It is often said by experienced reef keepers, we're not keeping fish and corals and invertebrates. We're keeping water. If you keep good water, then the tank will be happy. And you've heard me say that before if you've watched this channel for a while. And it's absolutely true. There are things in tap water that would be completely detrimental to a reef tank, like copper and tin and aluminum and lead. I have those in my report. They are in my water, but the concentration is very low. So you might say, with that very low concentration, is it really a problem? Yes, absolutely, it can be a problem. What happens over time is that the rocks and the substrate in our aquarium absorbs these things, these minuscule amounts of these trace elements over time, the copper and the tin and whatnot. Eventually, one day, the tank reaches a point where the rocks and the substrate are super saturated with these compounds and they can't absorb them anymore. So they start building up in the water column. And at that point is when you're going to start having issues, because it's going to eventually reach a concentration that is not conducive to happy life in your reef tank. It's part of old tank syndrome, and it's part of doing water changes with tap water for years on end. And this might take 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 years. But do you really want to spend the next 7 years of your life cultivating a beautiful reef aquarium chock full of corals and happy fish and happy invertebrates, and then 7 years from now, things just start to kind of go downhill? And you can't really figure out why, because your water is testing perfect for everything we test for at home. And then you send out an ICP test, you get that ICP test back, and your copper is off the charts because the rocks became supersaturated and then started leaching it back out in mega quantities. So all your inverts died. That created an ammonia spike, which killed all your fish, which created a higher ammonia spike. And now all your corals are dying, your tank's crashing because you used tap water for the last 7 years. You see where I'm going with this? If you want to dig into what is in your tap water, there are ways that you can do that. There are tap water sources that are absolutely okay for using with a reef tank. For most of us, that's not the case. If you want to use tap water in your reef tank, if you don't want to go down the road of dealing with an RODI unit, you can get your water tested. There are a lot of the big department home stores. They will do a water analysis for you for absolutely free. You get the box, you send it off, you get the results back in your email. That's possible for you to do. And if you're going to want to use tap water, let's just say you're in a college dorm or some situation like that, and you cannot install an RODI unit in that room, then, maybe get that water tested and see if it's going to be okay. It's possible for you to do that. I'd like to thank my 3 brand new members to the YouTube channel. I really appreciate you guys wanting to support me in that way. If you want to become a member of the channel and support the Reef Rookies Respectful Reef Keeping Mission, wow, that was a mouthful, you hit the join button on the homepage. It'll take you there. There's a bunch of tiers to choose from. You can pick one. Thank you so much. So with all of that said, I don't think that I could illustrate the point any more firmly than showing you actual analysis reports from tap water showing that there could be bad things in it. I highly recommend that you at least investigate the possibility of installing an RODI unit in your home. There's one that I recommend down in the description below, and I think it's a really good idea. Now, we really can't have this discussion without talking about TDS, total dissolved solids. It's very simple to get a little meter that you can stick into a little cup of water. Clean cup, mind you, needs to be clean. And this device is going to measure the electrical conductivity of any of the things that are in the water which are able to actually conduct electricity. Organics like silicates don't conduct electricity, so they don't show up on a TDS meter. And that presents a problem for us because things like that you have to test for specifically to know what the concentrations are in the water that you're using for your aquarium. But I turned to my Facebook group and I asked those people there to tell me what their TDS is in their tap water. And some of the results were absolutely astonishing, as high as 950 total dissolved solids in their water. That's 950 potential issues for their aquarium if they use that tap water in their tank. Just for reference, my goal with TDS in the water coming out of my RODI unit is 0. I start investigating ordering new filters at 1 ppm TDS. 1. I got something in my eye. Hang on. So you can see why 950 would be alarming to me. There was a lot of them in the several hundred range and a few around the 400, 500, and 600 range. And all of those are all potential issues for these people's aquariums. If you don't have a TDS meter and you don't know the quality of the water that you're putting into your tank, how can you be sure that it's good for your tank or not? You just can't. The next thing that we need to talk about is parameter balance and parameter control. And you can find that information right there on that video on the screen. So check that out and see what you think.